So I mentioned in our introductory video that um, we're using American pragmatism in this class. The reason that we are doing that is one, so that you can find relevance to you as a reader, and two, because it helps us connect to a whole lot of types of literature. And there's a lot you can do with American pragmatism. It does kind of pull from the values or themes um, that that are presented in new criticism. So, if you're used to hearing about like, oh, well, how do you deal with like uh, death or love or infidelity? If you remember that from high school, great. You've got a leg up on this one. Very particularly, I'm actually using a model from Mark Edmondson's Self and Soul, A Defense of Ideals. Um, I hate Mark Edmondson as a person. This is a very this book is a polemic. It's basically him saying that kids today don't know what they need to know about the. I think it's bullshit, honestly. However, the framework that he uses to make his argument is actually extremely well put together. I just don't agree with the degree to which he takes it. So that's why I'm using this particular book kind of as our framework. And in order to make his argument, basically what he did is he looked at classic literature from like Greece and Rome, which both have very heavily influence on um, culture in modern America and in the Western world in general. Um, and he uncovered that there are kind of these three themes, these three cultural values that come up again and again and again. Um, and that kind of inspired me to start thinking. And I realized that he's right. These three actually do connect just about every culture in the world in some way. Um, and the three are courage, compassion, and contemplation, the three C's. Um, Now, every culture has some that they think are more or less important than others. The Greek were very contemplation based. Um, the Romans were very, very courage based. We tend to be pretty courage based here in modern America as well, although I'm noticing the needle shifting a little bit more toward compassion in recent years too, which makes me very happy. Um, but basically, the breakdown of these is that um, courage and compassion are sort of two sides of the same coin. Um, they're both about having to risk something or having to give something up. Courage is giving something up for a greater ideal, a greater good, for truth, for justice, for God, whatever. Pick your value. It's going to be different for everybody, um, but that's going to be courage, is people who are willing to risk something or give something up for that. The most extreme examples are somebody who would be willing um, to die for their cause. Oedipus's daughter, Antigone, great example of that one. She knew what mattered the most and she didn't care what the consequences of that were. But it doesn't have to be that major. There are small acts of courage every day. Um, Standing up for somebody else because you think that somebody is being a bully or a bigot, um, or challenging your professor in class because you think that they're wrong about something. Those are still acts of courage. You could potentially be risking your grade, or at the very least, you're giving up time and energy that you could have spent on something else. Um, Compassion is that same kind of sacrifice, the same kind of giving something up, but instead of it being for a greater ideal, it's for another person. So, the small examples of this one are like that classic example from Up of Russell trying to find something that he can do to help his cranky old neighbor. Um, Helping old ladies cross the street, holding the door open for somebody. Those are very small examples of compassion. That's a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra energy, a little bit of extra thought that you didn't necessarily have to spend on doing that thing, but you did. because you care about other people. Um, Big examples of this one, Lysistrata is a great example. She's literally trying to save the lives of the people in her community, so she's kind of rallying them all together, um, and taking a lot of risks upon herself in doing that as well. And contemplation is sort of the balancing act of both sides of that coin. Um, and it's trying to figure out how you can give up the least and gain the most. So it's being thoughtful, it's being clever, it's being tactical. Um, like I said, this was an absolutely huge one for the Greeks. So, as we're going to see in the Odyssey in a couple of weeks, that's Odysseus's thing. He's contemplative. He's known as Wily Odysseus or Odysseus of the many turnings. The Greeks absolutely loved him because of that. Interestingly enough, the Romans actually hated him because of that, because they were very much more about courage. So they thought that he was a sneaky, shifty little bastard. Um, but that's courage, compassion, and contemplation. And I'm going to be using this framework a lot this semester, so I wanted to actually give you just a little video on it here, now, because that's especially going to be useful in this first journal that we're doing for the semester, but it's going to come up a lot. That's actually going to be the central framework we're using for our final exam, too. So now you know, courage, compassion, and contemplation, the classical virtues.